half of the duels is getting a good starting position for Sunday. The other half of the duels is making sure you get your race car through intact so you can race on Sunday. Let's get into it. Got a lot to talk about. I think there was a lot of early Ford cohesion working together. Toyota showed a lot of early speed, but I feel like they kind of faded. And then Chevy, I think, is the big story. They came on strong and they were like basically this new body style is allowing them to draft like they haven't been able to draft in years. And they showed a lot of speed. So let's get into it. I'm going to get this kind of highlight reel playing in the background. It's going to be playing on silent with 1.5 speed, but I want to go through all my notes here because I wrote down a lot of stuff and I want to touch on a bunch of different points. So let's start with single car pole qualifying. Kyle Busch looks screaming fast. He was the only car to get into the 48-second range. So he won the pole. Congratulations to Kyle Busch. This is huge. This was his first pole in 21 attempts at the Daytona 500. I think he mentioned that he'd gotten a pole at the summer Daytona race, but never at the Daytona 500. So that's really cool. And then he's never won the Daytona 500. So hopefully, you know what? I'm going to pull for him. You know, if he's the one who's looking the best on Sunday, then awesome. But as I've said many times, I got like 20 drivers that I like to watch. I don't pull for an individual driver. I want good racing and the best racer from that day to be the one that wins. So I'm looking at more like the quality of the overall racing, not just pulling for my guy. Because as I said, I got like 20 different drivers that I really like to watch and will kind of evaluate and critique and just enjoy. So what can I say? Chase Briscoe locked into P2. He looked really fast as well. But we're going to talk about the Toyotas in a minute. But overall, I was not seeing a ton of speed out of the Toyotas. So we saw a lot of speed out of the Fords early in the duels, and we saw a lot of speed out of the Chevy late in the duels, and we only saw a little bit of speed out of the Toyotas right at the beginning of Duel 2. So let's keep going. In Duel 1, RFK came out and dominated early. You had all four cars out front, Priest out front. You even had Corey LaJoie in the 99 open car right there in the mix, was doing really well. And let's jump onto Corey LaJoie for a second because he was doing really well. He was like in the mix. He was gonna be making the 500, and then he got rear-ended. He got bumped by it looked like Suarez. Suarez also looked like he got bumped by whoever was behind him. That caused LaJoie to go up into the fence, and unfortunately, it does not look like he's made the 500. So bummer for Corey LaJoie. He was showing really strong, showed a lot of speed. Those RFK Fords were super fast at the beginning of the first duel, but we got a question because all right, Priest was leading and they were really trucking along. But when they went to the pit, Priest had to put in so much fuel he dropped from first to sixth. And so I'm wondering if the RFK Fords were showing a lot of speed and running really hot early, but because they had to take on extra fuel, whether that caused an issue with them cycling back out in the proper position. So um, either way, I think it's good data for Sunday. I think it's good to see. All right, if we run hot, if we really push it, how is that going to affect our fuel consumption, and how is that going to affect our pitting? And I think they got those answers. So maybe that was a little bit of testing on their part. But overall, I thought RFK looked super fast. They were definitely pushing early. And I think that, fuel issue, well, now they know. Now they can adjust their strategy to deal with fuel. And, but overall, I thought they had a lot of speed. So we'll have to keep watching them. But what happened later was the Penske Fords came on and they won. So we got Logano and Blaney in P1, P2, and they showed a lot of speed. But all the Fords in general, the Fords were all working well together. There was a lot of good pushing going on, a lot of good drafting going on. And I thought they were blocking out the competition very well. So congrats to the Fords for having a very good first duel. And let's get into Bubba Wallace, though, because I feel kind of bad for Bubba Wallace. He was doing everything right. He finally got to the front when Dylan behind him got hit by Busher, and there was a whole row led by Busher into Dylan, and then Dylan hit Wallace slightly off center, caused Wallace to kind of wobble to the right and then correct back to the left, and he fishtailed to the left. He got hit in the left rear quarter panel by Dylan, and then he spun out into the infield. So it looked like minimal damage to his vehicle. Overall, not that big of a deal with like a wreck, but kind of unfortunate that he's not going to be starting toward the front because of something that wasn't really his fault. He just got hit off center, and it really caused him to fishtail, caused him to spin. Fortunately, he didn't spin into the wall. He spun into the infield, and I think the only damage was that left rear quarter panel, as I said. So, kind of rough. But in the Corey LaJoy wreck, where Suarez hit LaJoy, Suarez went up into the wall. Busher went up into the wall. Byron really hit the wall. Looked like it broke his rear toe link. And I think there was one more vehicle. So I think Suarez, Byron, and Busher are all three moving to backup vehicles, meaning they're being pushed all the way to the end of the row. We'll see how that plays out. I think there was one more vehicle I'm forgetting that is moving to a backup. But as I said, half of the duels is making it through with your car intact so you don't have to move to a backup, because when you move to the backup, you lose all the good that you did in the qualifying and you get pushed to the back. So that's rough on them. I'm glad they're able to race, but what can I say? I'm sure they would have preferred not to wreck and had, preferred to ride in their primary vehicle. So all right, let's keep going. And a little bit more on Busch. Busch already had P1. He was already the pole sitter. So his main job wasn't even worrying about finishing well. It was doing a little bit of practice, testing how he drafts, testing how he, works in traffic. But for the most part, it was avoiding any sort of issue with his car, avoiding a wreck, making sure he got his car through intact. And 100% Kyle Busch did that. So well done, Kyle Busch. But overall, I think from Duel 1, my takeaway was how fast all the Fords look. RFK early, Penske late, and then also how good RCR looked. I thought RCR and those Chevys looked really good in that first race. So we will watch Kyle Busch, see how he does from P1. And then, we've got from the end of the second duels, we'll get into who else made the first three rows. But right now, we've got P1 as Kyle Busch, P2 as Chase Briscoe, P3 as Logano, and P5 as Blaney. And I don't know about you, if I was Kyle Busch, I would not want Logano and Blaney right behind me on a super speedway. So what can I say? Now let's get into Duel 2, because Duel 2 wasn't as chaotic. There was not the wrecking that happened in the first race. But, and I wrote in my notes, we got 3 wide, but no movement. It might as well be the 405 at rush hour. Yeah, everybody's going fast, but nobody's passing. So it was fairly mundane for a while. You had Briscoe and Hamlin out front. They showed some early Toyota speed, but you had kind of all the JGR cars kind of toward the front for a while. But after the fuel stop, I feel that the Chevys went, all right, now let's go. And they hooked up and they started hauling. And so in the last third of the race, the Chevys really came on strong. And I feel like except for Bell, the Toyotas kind of disappeared from the equation. So I'll have to go back and look and see exactly where Hamlin finished. But overall, toward the end, I felt like it was just Bell who was in contention. Now, Briscoe, I think dropping out, that's more of a issue with his pit stop. He stopped short, had to restart, move into the pit about 18 inches, and then they could put the fuel canister in. So a little bit of an issue there. But the other part of that is he's also protecting his vehicle because he already has the P2 spot. So he doesn't need to get into the mix. He needs to avoid wrecks. So I'm not really concerned about Briscoe there because he did show that early speed. Did have a pit issue, but overall, Briscoe's solid. Bell showed late speed, and we'll get into that in a minute. Um, when we went to pit, you had a couple different pit cycles, and then you had Connor Zilic kind of get hung out to dry. And now I don't know if this was a communication issue, if this was a rookie hazing issue, or what was going on, but it was definitely one where Zilish got to the front, led a lap, and then he came in and nobody followed him. Now, in the end, it worked out in his favor. He was able to overcome it because he's a darn good driver. But I do feel like he may have been kind of hung out to dry there by somebody because he pitted by himself. But as I said, it didn't really impact things, and he was able to regain position because after the pitting cycle was over, and you had kind of the two different cycles kind of interfere with each other to kind of hook back up and get back on running together. Then you had six Chevys come up on the third lane on the outside, and they hooked up and they got into the draft, and they looked really fast. I think this new body style is definitely has improved the Chevy drafting ability and allowed them to push and to receive a push better because they're the bumpers are hooking up better is what it looked like. And when you get to the end of the race and Chase Elliott comments that Hocevar gave him a really good push, but also a really good quality push on center, no squirreliness. I think that is a reflection of Hocevar being good at it, but also the bodies hooking up better than they had in previous years. You had, I guess, better contact areas is what I'm thinking. So overall, definitely impressed with how the Chevys performed in the last third of that race. Ty Dillon surged, Larson and Elliott surged to the front, and then that outside lane. I think you had Hocevar, Elliott, Dillon, McDowell, Zilich, and I'm forgetting some. I'm forgetting something. There were six Chevys going, and they looked super fast. They had great drafting. That third lane, and then what can I say? I do think was it was it Alfredo? It was Alfredo, I think. So Alfredo may have been the sixth Chevy there, and I do feel bad for Alfredo. He made the Sunday race by where he finished, but he failed post race inspection. So he's out and BJ McLeod is in. I feel really bad for Alfredo because he was showing so much emotion, tears running down his face. You could hear it in his voice. So excited to make it, and then to you know be kicked out because of like a transmission tunnel tube not being connected. I guess it had come out and it was sitting in the floor of the car. And then also one of the vents for the driver was not connected to the outside of the car as well. Um, so you're not allowed to have stuff basically falling off the car. And so he failed post race inspection. And again, I feel really bad for the dude because that's just horrible because he had done so well, and to lose it in the inspection phase, that's just rough. But that row of six Chevys was unreal. You had, Elliott, Dillon, Hocevar, but it was at one point Hocevar was leading with Elliott behind him, and then I think it was Dillon and Alfredo and McDowell and Zilich, or maybe McDowell was ahead of Alfredo. I'll have to go back and look, but overall that row looked super fast, looked good. And then we went to commercial, and it was a full screen commercial. And when we came back from commercial, instead of Hocevar leading Elliott, Elliott was leading Hocevar, and they never told us how that happened. We never saw a replay, and this is my big frustration with Fox. I understand you need to pay, for everything, so you need to run ads. I get it, but please do the small screen and the big screen. Keep the race in the small screen and do the commercial on the rest of the screen. You're still getting an 80% ad. You're still getting 100% of the audio, but we would not have missed how Chase Elliott got in front of Hocevar at that point. We would have seen that transition. Or at worst, at least give me a replay or something when you come back from commercial so I know what happened. Never happened. All of a sudden, Hocevar's leading to Elliott leading. Happened during a commercial. Again, please, Fox, Please, you've improved. Your booth is better than it was. I think your graphics are better than they were, but the full screen commercials are just borderline criminal because of the stuff that you miss and then you don't address it when you come back. So we don't know exactly how Hocevar got past there, but he did. And Elliott was in the lead, had that whole row of Chevys behind him, and overall, that was really good to see because you did see a lot of speed out of those Chevys. And then I want to get specifically into Hocevar. Now, I think Hocevar showed a lot of maturity here. He could have dropped down in front of Larson when Larson dropped to block Bell, who was coming from fifth position trying to make a surge to the front. Larson dropped down and blocked Bell. This is right toward the end. And Hocevar probably could have dropped down and tried to block Larson, but he stuck with his wingman. He stuck with Elliott. He kept doing the push because I think maybe it was, the crew chief in his ear. Maybe it was a directive from Chevy. But overall, I think this was a very mature decision to not try to go for the short-term victory, to try to go up one more car position in the duel, but finish where he did and lock in starting in the third row on Sunday. So I think this was a very mature decision to stay with the push. Elliott even said he gave a lot of credit to Hocevar for a good push and a quality push, meaning on center, no squirreliness. So again, I do think this was a moment of maturity, a good decision, a long-term thinking. Don't go for short-term glory. Go for better positioning on Sunday, because if he dove down to try to get in front of Larson, like there was a little bit of a gap, but not much. It would have been tight. He could have wrecked, he could have hurt the race car, or he could have dropped back 2, 3, 4 positions and not be starting in the Daytona 500 in row 3. So overall, I think Hocevar made the right decision. Now, whether that was crew chief or him, I don't think it really matters because he did what needed to be done to get a row 3 start on Sunday. And so I do think that is good overall. Definitely a moment of maturity. And I'm good to see that type of growth because everybody can see the raw talent in Hocevar. It's just he's made some boneheaded youthful decisions, and I put youthful in there intentionally because sometimes it's just an experience thing. Sometimes it's just a little bit of youthful confidence where you're overconfident in what you can do. So him going for position over maybe getting one more spot on this duel, that is a smart move on his part. So definitely a smart move. And we also saw, that push by Bell, and Bell's done this before, that late push on like the final lap, and he's coming in hot. He showed a lot of speed. So it could be that there's a lot of Toyota speed we just didn't see in the duels because we had Chase Briscoe get P2. We had Hamlin and Briscoe leading Duel 1 for a while, but they faded, and Bell was the only one kind of in striking distance toward the end, and he definitely was coming in hot. So Larson made a good block. McDowell could have come down too, but he stayed tight and prevented a wreck because he could have come down and gone right into the side of Bell there, and there could have caused a massive wreck. So overall, I feel like the Chevys right at the end there, I think the two Spire cars, McDowell and Hocevar, made very smart decisions, sitting tight and going for Sunday position and not for glory. So overall, really good. I think we're going to see three fairly evenly matched manufacturers on Sunday. We know the Fords are fast. We know the Chevys are fast now. The Toyotas, we got a pretty good idea they're fast, but we only have one Toyota in the first 3 rows, and that's Chase Briscoe. We got 3 Chevys and 2 Fords. So definitely a good mix. And what can I say? Overall, I'm super excited. We got the truck race tonight. We got the Grand National O'Reilly's race tomorrow, Saturday. We've got the ARCA Menards race on Saturday as well. And then the Daytona 500 on Sunday. And what can I say? I'm super excited. I hope you are. Comment below, like, subscribe, the stuff. And hopefully, we'll get some good commentary and get some good conversation going because I want to have more of a conversation with you guys. So, what can I say? I'm super excited and I can't wait for the 500 on Sunday. Talk to you soon.